It's a Reaction Monday on the SDH Network, live from Central Florida in various locations. John's still in a hotel. Maddie and Nick are in what the Federal Aviation Administration referred to as MCO, the Orlando Airport. And they are heading back to Atlanta. I'm heading back to Atlanta later today because I got some other things I got to do from a seated position. It's a Reaction Monday, so guys, time to react about what happened. Ladies first. Chivalrous environment. So, Maddie, from 30,000 feet, now that you've had a night to think about it, Atlanta and Orlando, what sticks in your head?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? You know, it was strange coming into it because it's like, you know, you had this, it was like magic. It was like no one expected you to be there. No one expected anything. Nonetheless, beat the best team in MLS, period. And then you get to this point and, you know, you feel that belief. And then, unfortunately, just, you know, off of a great corner from Orlando, and then it just kind of bounces in the box, and then it finds the back of the net. You know, Atlanta had a couple of chances to find one, but it just wasn't as clear cut. And it's unfortunate, but I think the biggest takeover for me is that you can't say they didn't fight to the very end. And that, I think, is so important. And this group in particular, from the players to the coaching staff to the support team, everyone, I mean, they did something special. And I think you can't take that away.
Nick, from 30,000 feet, you were down on the field, and people can see your handiwork across all of our social media. And it is very, very cool stuff. But 30,000 feet, now that the lens is no longer attached to your eye, what do you have to think about what happened yesterday?
I would have to say that, and I've had a few hours to sit on this, and when we left the stadium last night, I said there's no way that Orlando can replicate the energy that they brought. One thing that I did notice right away, from minute one, I was right by the Orlando City players, and the Orlando City players were all 100% locked in, all of them, top to bottom. This was not, they didn't have the feeling of the like the pensive, scared Orlando City that we are normally used to, the ones that would collapse whenever there was any sort of adversity. They looked like they were 100% dialed in and ready. And I think that's a testament to Oscar Perea. I think that also says that the fact that the game ended 1-0 to their favor is a testament to Atlanta and their ability to, and the fight that Atlanta brought. I said I don't think that Orlando can replicate that energy, but if they can, you might be looking at something that could be considered, from a Central Florida perspective, special. What I saw last night from Atlanta was a team that just missed that little bit of sharpness. You know, I was 15 feet away from Brad whenever that goal went in. It was, if you ran that same sequence 10 times in a row, maybe one time it's going in. You know, you had Williams right there. You know, you had a whole gaggle of blue shirts around, and it just landed perfectly. And there's nothing you can really do about that. It's the nature of the game. But full credit to the preparation of Atlanta. It looked like they knew what they wanted to do. They just missed that little bit of sharpness in making it happen.
All right, Maddie, let me bring you in here because I know that the two of you have to board a flight in about 11 minutes, and we want you guys to get home in one piece, unless, of course, Maddie's connection continues to misbehave. And we'll see what happens with Nick's thought that you were on a bus, Nick.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is – so the thing is, I'll show you guys. Orlando does have a very cool thing here, and they have it where they have like a little mini movie theater back over here.
Yeah.
So they're showing Home Alone at the moment. Oh, sorry. It appears that they're showing Home Alone 2.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
All right, Maddie, don't move from that spot, Maddie.
Y'all, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. Every time y'all were glitching the whole time, and then it bumped me out twice, and I got nervous. We're back now, though. Everything's
Yes.
good.
That's Maddie's spyware. Maddie's got spyware all over her phone, so it's slowing everything down.
Of course. And so now that she's busting out the shades to be much like you, Nick, Maddie, what are you going to... She's learning more things about her phone. She learned that she can drop emojis over her shoulder. She apparently can now do fireworks behind. I don't know. I don't know what she's got going on with her phone.
One thing I do want to talk about,
Yeah, Nick.
if I can, and
Yeah.
I may be jumping the script a bit. We went to the Atlanta United supporters meetup yesterday. The number of red shirts that we saw down here in Orlando was crazy.
Oh yeah.
And on the field, from a field level, you never forgot that the Atlanta supporters were there. I mean, you could hear them the whole game. And, you know, even when things were kind of bleak, you could still hear them. And to me, that was unbelievably cool to be down. I mean, I had nothing but purple shirts behind me. And anytime the Atlanta supporters started getting really loud, you could see the frustration and annoyance on the purple shirts faces, because they were just like, why? They should not be this loud. They should not be this loud. And yet the red shirts kept bringing it. So, you know, for everyone who drove down, flew down, I do want you to know that on the field level, we could hear everything. So, you know, excellent work. You know, the energy that they brought was just crazy. You know, it sucks that such wonderful energy, wonderful support had to be brought to an aluminum box in Central Florida. You know, it is what it is. Can't do anything about that, but you know, the energy was there, so it was something that we can definitely call was in full effect.
No doubt.
I even heard it like too. I turned to John and I was like, you would hear the Orlando, they would be doing their chant, and then right behind them you'd hear United or you'd hear Atlanta, and they'd be going crazy. And I'm like, there they are. I'm like, because even not even in that section, there was so many red all over the stadium in different areas, and so like it's just the amount of support that traveled down from Atlanta was awesome. It was fun.
Yeah.
When you think, Maddie, about this run over the last 6 weeks, what sticks in your head?
I think just the fight. Like really, I mean, from that game in Montreal, back at home, it was such a deflating feeling after that game. And then to have a game like that against the New York Red Bulls and to hear the stadium be so loud after that game and everything. I mean, the span of the run that this team went on after that Montreal game and what they did in that short amount of time, I think is such a testament to Rob Valentino and his whole staff and what they've done this season. I'm not even looking at that area too, because the buildup to this moment had been since he came in as interim head coach. I mean, he instilled that belief in them. He instilled belief that they could do this. I mean, even Dax McCarty has talked about it multiple times that, there were times where they didn't believe in themselves, but they did. Rob and his staff did. Every single one of them. They never gave up. They never gave up hope, never gave up belief, not for once. And so I think that is something that we've seen an accumulation of it. And yeah, I mean, I said at the beginning, this group is special, man. I mean, some of the funnest times I've had watching these games. I mean, I will never forget that night in Fort Lauderdale for Game 3, ever in my life. I will never, ever forget that.
Nick, you mentioned what had gone on over the last 6 weeks and what happened yesterday. This begins, and this was a point that was made yesterday by Mike and Jason on the air at 9:09. Preseason starts in 7 weeks. And you've got 2 holiday weeks that are tied to that, plus New Year's. So there isn't a whole lot of time for everybody to sit there and go, oh, yeah, 2025, it's over there. No, that is not the case.
No. And one of the great things about a season, especially as the closing chapter of this season, it was sort of like a fairy tale, right? It felt like everything was sort of predetermined. Like it's a run to the titles. It's the Braves in '91 worst to first. It's the it's the these great sports stories that should never happen, but they do. And it felt like this Atlanta United team was one of those teams that was going to have that sort of great fairy tale ending. Now the downside of that is there's a significant hangover that can happen from a season like this. 7 weeks, in my mind, I know that there are people who may be like, "Oh man, this is not great." That it's right around the corner, so many decisions to be made. I think it's a great thing that it is right around the corner, with 2 holidays in between, because there's no time for hangover. There's no time for any sort of defeatism to set in. There's no time for what ifs and how it could have been. It's you take a little bit of time with your families, and then immediately you are back into it again. So, if anything, from a team perspective, it's, in my opinion, great that you're back in so quickly. From a fan perspective, um, you know, buckle up, because it's going to be an interesting, very short off season. So, how it shakes out, none of us know. I think there's maybe 2 people on the entire planet at the moment who know what's going to be happening next. We're not in their heads, so all we can do is guess and speculate. But the one thing I do want to say is there have been moments this season that really tested the fan base, and there are moments where that testing was rewarded, especially with this final run. There are times, if you've been in the sports world long enough and you have been around any sort of a high level athlete, you can sort of read body language pretty easily. There was body language on this team that shifted dramatically. I don't know why. I'm not going to speculate why. But the body language, the way this team carried themselves, shifted so dramatically. It was so entertaining to watch. The energy that they brought, even when they weren't technically the best team on the field, it was something spectacular and fun, something I'm going to remember. And sad that it ended the way it did, but 7 weeks, baby. It's like right around the corner. So set your watches.
Yes, set your watches. So, Maddie, 7 weeks, which really isn't 7 weeks. You've got to come up with a technical director, and you've got to come up with a head coaching decision. You've got player decisions that need to be made. It's going to be a very, very busy 48 days.
Yeah, it's going to be very busy. You're looking – the decisions need to be made about a head coach, about a general manager. You also have 2 DP slots you have to fill, and then end of roster decisions. That's coming around in 24 hours, actually, I believe now. So it's crazy. You gotta. Things are already starting to move, and it's interesting. I think it's going to be interesting to see where the chips fall and what things are rolling with, and which area it's going to be heading in. I don't know. I think it's going to be fun. Sorry, that echoed in my ear, and I was so confused. It scared me. No, but I mean, I think it's going to be a fun off season. Figuring it out. It's a short one. 7 weeks till we're back for preseason, but a lot of decisions to be made.
Do the 2 of you need to board?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then go board your flight to head back to Atlanta. We'll see, because it is a full flight according to Maddie. So we'll see how many folks wearing 5 stripes are going to be joined by y'all. Safe flight home. Obviously, we've got more days this week to discuss things, and we'll break it all down. But get out of here, get on the plane, get home, get back to your loved ones, and we will catch up with you back in Atlanta, guys. Thanks for dropping by to start things off. As Maddie gets to drop her bubble emojis now, because she has figured out what's going on with her phone. All right, get out of here, guys. Be safe. We'll see you soon. There goes Nick and Maddie. And so Nick and Maddie batting lead off this morning. And so here's the rundown. They got to board, they're boarding a plane. Abe Gordon from 92.9 traditionally leads off. But because Maddie and Nick had to board a plane, we had them bat and lead off. And so now we have the segment that we did with Abe. That'll go. Then we'll come back. Bart's going to join us at 10 o'clock. Bart has what he referred to yesterday when Maddie and I ran into him, as thoughts when it comes to reffing down here, because there's some reffing down here stuff that we do need to get into. I don't know how awake Bart is, but we will certainly find out how awake Bart is coming up in just a little bit. We've got your thoughts as well. We've got post-game after Abe Gordon coming up here in just a little bit. We've got some post-game to run from Rob Valentino, from Brad Guzan, from Dax McCarty. We'll run that in the show. Get you to Bart at 10 o'clock. The post-game that we haven't run will run after Bart, because if Bart falls asleep on the air, then we'll have a natural out point. But then after that, we'll get into your thoughts as well. And Nick's had raised a point having to the announcement about the colorful language. Maddie and I, full disclosure, we were in just under the press box in the extended seating, the alternate press box, or whatever you want to call it. And so we heard a couple of very choice chants with colorful language coming from, I know this will surprise you, the supporters groups there in the end zone with Orlando City. So that would be where I was thinking it was coming from, would be because of the chants during goal kicks, specifically from the SGs for the purple team aimed at Brad Guzan, and the repeated nature of using them every single time there was a goal kick. I mean, it wasn't the most original material. It was very, very colorful language, but it wasn't all that original. And so every single time there was a goal kick, you had that particular announcement over the public address. We could hear the 17s, but they were on the other end zone. So we could hear bits and pieces, whether the 17s language was colorful enough, we couldn't hear it over the colorful language from the purple team supporters that were off to our left. So I would say that the PA announcement, yes, was made in general, but specifically toward the home supporters for their colorful and yet unoriginal chants that were there. So before we get into all of your thoughts and post game, let me say hi to everybody. Abe Gordon coming up in just a sec. Morning Phoenix, morning Alex, morning Abby, morning Pars, morning Michael, morning Nix. They're airport. They're in the airport. Morning Sharif. Let's see, who else am I missing here? Morning OG, morning Hutch. Let's see, I'm trying to see if there's anybody that I missed. Morning Michael. Morning. So Mr. 13. Good to have you. I think this is the first time that you have popped up in the Twitch pitch. So good to see you this morning, Mr. 13. I think I'm reading that correctly. If I have missed it, if I have misread it, let me know. It's not like some are 13. Trying to think of so Omer 13, but I thought it was so Mr. 13. If I've misread it, let me know and I will correct it. So Mr. 13. Morning, Derek. Morning, OG. Morning, Rich Ransom, who is in this morning. And so morning, Harry. And thank you. Morning, Omar. Okay. Got it. Cool. Thank you. So I was just reading the ID. So morning, Omar. Good to have you. Don't be a stranger. Abby, one card all game. Yes, we will get into that and how Armando Villarreal managed the match as part of a greater discussion. So reffing down here coming up at 10 o'clock has to do with Armando Villarreal, management of matches in general, and what we saw from the NWSL Championship and anything else that was there in Bart's mind from the weekend. So let me not waste any more time. Pre-game conversation that we had before we went live this morning with Abe Gordon at 92.9. Here is that talk that we had with Abe about what went on his mind, in his mind from what we saw yesterday, plus the run from the last 6 weeks. Time to catch up with our buddy Abe Gordon at 92.9 The Game, who is properly hydrating, getting ready for this particular segment. What you didn't get to see before we started was Abe and his massive jug of hydration to get ready for what we're going to talk about here with Atlanta United and Orlando City. First and foremost, where were you when you were watching yesterday?
Well, I was in the studio. Obviously, we had pregame and postgame duty, so I just hung around in the studio. And it's kind of the best of both worlds for me. Obviously, I get to hear Mike and Jason live, no radio delay as it's happening. And then obviously I got Apple TV pulled up as well. So I was just in studio watching it happen and seeing if something would change. But unfortunately, it did not.
I didn't know if you were pacing back and forth in hallways or anything like that. That's why I was asking.
No, my co-host Garrett Chapman's a little more of a nervous watcher than I am. I'm pretty comfortable. I mean, not to surprise anyone, but I think almost 40 years of Atlanta sports will kind of set you up to expect the worst and be prepared for it. So I'm all good.
Going into the match on Sunday, Juice Box has had Atlanta at a plus 371 to win in 90 minutes. I think it was just north of plus 300 for a 90-minute draw. What was your vibe going in?
Yeah, I was decently confident. I mean, you look at some of the things you were able to do against Inter Miami. You hope to bring that back. But more specifically, it was the success you had against this team back on decision day. Look, I was somewhat confident against Miami based on the success you had against them. And so you kind of parlay that here. The biggest concern was the international break and the sort of loss of momentum. And I think you did see that for the first time in probably the last 4, 5, 6 games here. You just didn't have a very good first half. And part of it was due to some other circumstances that took place that we can get into. But you just didn't open the way that you did in other days. And as that first half progressed, you just kind of got the feeling, and some things in the second half happened as well, just started to get the feeling that it probably just wasn't their day. And so early on, I kind of got situated in that mindset and awaited the team to prove me wrong like they have so many times in these past couple of weeks. Unfortunately, they didn't yesterday, though.
6th minute, you had the early shot off the post, and then you had the clearance off the line. And it seemed like it took the first 15 to 20 for both teams really to get into, other than that first opportunity that we're talking about for Orlando. It took like it feels like it took a little 20 minutes or so for both teams to kind of find their rhythm and their sea legs, considering the international window that was behind them.
Yeah, I think it definitely did impact both teams. They did look the stronger side out from the outset. But yeah, whether it was just the fact that there was travel involved for a number of players on Atlanta United, or just the fact that you weren't in game-like conditions and that mindset of building towards a game, yet a week off of that mindset, definitely impacted Atlanta United. And again, Orlando had a couple players had to deal with it too. So we're not using that as a crutch. But in terms of where Atlanta had been at the start of games and where they were yesterday, you should have been concerned very early on about like, oh boy, this is not the start that they had been having in recent weeks. And eventually it did catch up with them.
And then, kind of skipping through events here, obviously Jamal having a couple of knocks, then he ends up being laboring starting in the 28th, and you're wondering, okay, can he just get me to the half, get me to the half? That doesn't end up being the case. You've got to have the early sub. You've got to burn that window, bringing in Daniel Rios. Rios gets you to the half, and then he's in for the sum total of 4 minutes because he has to go from a concussion sub, and Rob Valentino and the staff have to figure out, okay, what do we do here? We're down Jamal, we're down Daniel. How are we going to try and attack without a true striker up top?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about when you get the feeling that it just wasn't your day. You're dealing with the injury to TRA, and you've dealt with some injuries already over the course of this playoff run. And so you thought maybe you could manage that. But it was the combination of you give up a goal, which really wasn't a great goal. It was kind of a ball that was maybe tried to be cleared, and it kind of ricocheted off and went past Goose and whatever. when you look at the Miami game winner in the opening game, like if Jordy Alba's going to hit a cracker, like then you tip your cap. Those are the goals you're kind of somewhat more okay with being beaten by. If a guy just puts on a nasty move and hits an upper 90 rip, like fine, but don't let it be some lazy, like kind of sometimes that goes in, sometimes it doesn't. And unfortunately, that was the case. And then you thought maybe after the goal you would hold on till halftime, but they didn't feel comfortable trying that with TRA either. And then, yeah, the flip side of Rios is on for 3 minutes. He comes back to start the second half. He's on for 90 seconds. He goes down, and you're just like, that the culmination of those four things: the TRA injury, the goal, TRA not making it to halftime, and then Rios having to be subbed out. That was like, man, it really just isn't their day. But at the same time, they found stretches in the second half that made you wonder, like, man, if they can just find a way to get one home, try and get the penalties and see what happens, that you start to pique your interest a little bit. It wasn't to be had, unfortunately, but again, it just didn't feel like it was their day. And unfortunately, all of the teams in the MLS Eastern Conference, at least, are kind of just trying to catch breaks here based on the seeding and what's happened. So it wasn't Atlanta's night or day yesterday, but during the post-game show, we start looking back at like where this team was mid-season, like how low some of the moments this year had been, like to think of what they accomplished down the stretch. Still a special season for considering it doesn't end the way everyone wanted it to.
I was going to ask you what your takeaways are from this 6-week run versus everything that led into this 6-week run. Brad mentions that we'll hear from Brad a little later on about it being two separate seasons almost, where you have what you're going through in your 13th and at points in the Eastern Conference, and then you hit it and you make this push and you knock off the number one seed and get into the semis. What are your takeaways from this 6-week run?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to be very blunt initially. My first takeaway is that Rob Valentino deserves this job, and I'd be a little bit surprised if there's not an announcement later today or tomorrow naming him, or removing the interim tag, naming him the manager, whatever phrase you want to call it. I think it's clear in regards to the post-game comments yesterday, the players believe in him. The players want to see him as the manager. And quite frankly, there were some comments that, like, if you don't name him manager here, he will be named manager elsewhere. So I think that's like the first big takeaway was like, this is Rob Valentino's job, or at least it should be. And I'd be surprised if we don't get an announcement very quickly. Obviously, a lot of things have to happen in this offseason. And like Wednesday and Thursday, Friday are essentially holidays. You're not going to drop the news then. So Monday or Tuesday kind of feels like that would be it, if that's the decision. And that's obviously up to them. In terms of the other aspect of this, because I think that's kind of its own discussion, it was really, when you think of what took place over the course of the season, you start with the expectations. You start with 2 wins in your first 3 games, and you're going to be one of the higher scoring teams in the Eastern Conference, and blah, 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 blah. That all falls apart. And we recognize almost immediately season's not going to go down like that. To the point where you sell your 2 biggest pieces in Giakoumakis and Almada. You also hand Wiley off for slightly different reasons. And you have to rebuild this thing from scratch, not even midway, essentially 2/3 of the season. And you get some very heavy, unexpected additions. You brought in Pedro Amador kind of as a backup in case you sold Wiley, but no one expected Amador to have this thing locked down defensively and then add what he added on the all. I mean, obviously you hope that's what he does, but you didn't really count on it, especially not on the offensive side of things. So when you look back, just a lot of moving pieces that kind of started to figure themselves out and started to gel. My concern about what we saw these last 6 or 7 weeks is I don't think you can have this mindset over the course of an entire season. I think it will burn the team out to approach games and moments like that. So that is something that has to be measured and kind of figured out. But if you remove the preseason expectations and you look just at how this team is trending right now, I think there's real reason for hope and optimism coming into next year. And I think that is what this run has done. It has set you up for what could be a monumental, somewhat club-defining offseason, and carrying that hopefully into a run in the next MLS season that you improve and take a step forward from where you were this year. I mean, you look at the teams you're surrounded by, how badly you started, what you had to deal with over the course of the season. If you just play a normal season, like, you shouldn't be anywhere in the discussion with Montreal and Orlando City and Philly. And like, you should be up there with NYCFC and the Red Bulls and battling for that 4 seed, if not higher. And I think we'll come in maybe misguided, but we'll come in with optimism next season based on whatever we put together this offseason that, hey, this is a team that's going to battle for 4 or 5. And that's the hope. And we try and build from there.
Home playoff game. I know that was the expectation coming into this season, and it should be that at the very least every single season here involving this club. Ed Gordon, 92.9 The Game, visiting as he always does here on Mondays, or here on a Reaction Monday on SDH. I feel like Lee Hacksaw Hamilton all of a sudden. Reaction. I need to hear from you. Rancho Cucamonga, Rancho Palos Verdes. Sorry, I go off on a riff. You mentioned the offseason and how there are a lot of decisions that are going to be made. Once again, Brad mentions that the room is going to be different. No Dax McCarty is a part of this. You're not going to have Brooks Lennon from the beginning of training camp because of his injury recovery. And you're now going to have some roster decisions that are going to need to be figured out with wingers and strikers and such. But at the same time, you've also got some folks that have stepped in, and there are going to be some decisions here. Ronald Hernandez is a decision. I think Luis Abram is a decision. I think trying to figure out what to look for in a Noah Cobb and having him as a part of the discussion at the back. He's a decision. Obviously, Atlanta United has the roster decisions to make that they will announce coming up the next couple of days. But when it comes to this group, it's going to be a different group, and there are some decisions that are going to sway how you're going to impact other things. There are some dominoes here that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, anyone involved in the attack is up for grabs. I don't know how many of them we'll be bringing back, with the exception, of course, of Saba. But I mean, when you look at the attack, I mean, Tyler Wolf have a role. Does Shande Silva have a role? Jamal Tiare's 31, going to be 32. Edwin Mosquera. I mean, I think all of those jobs are up for grabs, and maybe they retain some of those guys, and maybe they move on. I certainly think at least one high-priced player will be brought in up top or on a wing somewhere in an advanced position to help out. So I think Daniel Rios as well in that group up for grabs. I mean, we may have 3 of the same guys, and we may have none of the same guys up top, and depending on what role. And you look further back, and look, I know you got to do what's best for your team, but I think there's also a responsibility at some level to like help people out in the development of their own career. If you're not going to play Noah Cobb, if you're not going to run Efren Morales out there, move them. And that doesn't mean you have to sell them. You can loan them out, and if you want to bring them back, then bring them back. But I don't know what the benefit is of Noah Cobb kind of riding the pine for the first team, and he needs development at a higher level. While I would love to see that here, because I think he's got a boatload of tools, if that's not part of their plans, and same thing for Efren Morales, if that's not part of their plans, move them and let them develop, and maybe you can bring them back, or maybe you sell them or whatever. But I think there's somewhat of a responsibility to like help young kids out, develop. And I know like that's me saying it. I'm not running a team, and I'm over here thinking like I want this player to be the best they can be. I don't know if that will take place here in Atlanta in the role that they have, and obviously roles can change, stuff like that. The midfield is what's interesting because obviously Jay Fortune is going to slide in and be a much bigger piece. It really what he was over the last third of this season. And so without Dax, I mean, what's the future for Moyamba? I think Sleesh is in a good situation, but what are you doing in the midfield? There's a lot of pieces. And then the final piece here, John, is the back. You brought in Josh Cohen for a reason. All right. And I think, at least for me, Goose outperformed expectation this season in terms of how he played, especially down the stretch. And I think there's a team option on him, and it's up to them. But he is out of contract technically unless they want to bring him back. It's a tough decision because he has been the guy from the very beginning here at Atlanta United. But we also knew when you brought in Josh Cohen on the deal that you brought him in on, you did not bring him in to start games with Atlanta United too. And so that's a decision they're going to have to make as well. And how does that change things for the entire scope of this team? Obviously, again, I don't want to oversell it, but I also don't think we can undersell it. This has the potential to be a franchise-defining offseason at every level. What you do in the back with Goose and some of the guys above him, what you do up front. Can you find an attack? You got to find someone. You look at the teams that are still alive in MLS. You look at the teams that were eliminated in this round. You look at the teams that were eliminated in the first round. These teams have alphas. These teams have scores that you need to be wary of. And Atlanta United just simply does not have that. And Giakoumakis kind of was that when he was healthy, but he was never healthy. And so you've got to find an alpha one way or another. There's got to be changes up top. We can't do this thing where the last 15 goals for Atlanta United were scored by 12 different players. Like, that's not going to be good enough on a week in, week out basis. I think they're aware of that. But again, none of this happens until we get a new technical director and a new manager, or remove the tag at the minimum from Rob Valentino. So there's like this weird progression of things that have to happen. And quite frankly, training camp is 7 weeks away. You don't have as much time as you would really think that you have to set up a whole offseason. It is really under a microscope. And so I think things are going to move pretty quickly. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if Monday or Tuesday we get an announcement on the manager.
So you're of the thought that you name the coach and then you bring in the technical director, because then there are some trains of thought that are the reverse, where even if we go down this road, that Rob would be named, that even if he is the one that's in house, there is that train of thought that you bring in the technical director to be in concert with Garth. They get together, then they decide, then it's individual A, those kinds of things. So the inverse is a possibility, but you're looking at coach because he's here, then you bring in the technical director as a part of this process.
If you're stuck on keeping Rob Valentino, sure. If you're going outside of Rob Valentino, then I think bringing in the technical director to then bring in a head coach makes the most sense, because you can find guys that kind of align and have the same thought process. But if it's going to be Rob, I'm not sure that the technical director is the first decision that has to be made. I think you go ahead and announce it and move on. But again, it has to take place quickly, because you've got a lot of decisions personnel wise that need to be made over the next, what is it, November 2 weeks? 3 weeks. You got to move on these things. So if it's Rob, I think you can go ahead and name him. If it's someone else, bringing in a technical director. But again, you're also caught on this timeline. Like, is the guy you're looking at involved still in the MLS Cup playoffs or elsewhere around the world? I mean, there's all sorts of moving parts, and you just don't have time to let it kind of align necessarily with your dream, potentially because of the timeline.
Thursday is Thanksgiving. What is Thanksgiving in the Gordon household and extended family? What is it looking like?
Yeah, it starts by waking up earlier than you should on a holiday and running a half marathon. So I'll be in them streets, as the people say, but probably not in the way you would think.
No.
Also a little concerned about the weather forecast for Thursday. It looks like it's going to rain. I haven't run a race in the rain in a long time, certainly not a long race in the rain. So I'm hoping the forecast changes over the next 36, 48 hours, but we will we'll see how that goes. And then just the regular stuff. We'll watch a lot of football, both college and pro, and eat some food and that's that. And nothing crazy though. I told the variety of stops I'll be making. You don't want me cooking and baking. I don't want to be cooking and baking. So you either delegate something I can buy or something I can bring. I was placed in charge of chips and dip. They have been acquired, and we're ready to roll.
Looking forward to it. And we will get the full report next Monday, my friend, as we figure out who is going to be the final two as we get to MLS Cup coming up. The season sprint, the season-ending sprint is coming upon us because, as you said, training camp is in 7 weeks. There we go. So 7 weeks, we're back at it in training camp. Be well, my friend. Hit the promo for me. Why are we taping this and not to you live this morning?
Yeah, we got a big remote at Eagle Watch Golf Club, a nice brown grass charity classic. I will not be playing, unfortunately. I have to be working. But 92.9 The Game will be out on the road today, and then business as usual tomorrow. And then we kind of all head out for a variety of holidays over the course of the week. I do want to give a special note. Myself and Bo Morgan, Squid Billy of the Morning Shift, we have a special show at New Realm Brewing Company ahead of Georgia Tech, Georgia on Friday night. So from 5:30-ish or whenever the Hawks game's over until 7:30, we're going to be out there. So if you're in town, if you're sticking around, come say hi. New Realm Brewing Company on Friday, late afternoon into the early evening.
As always, my friend, great to see you. We will get the full report on Thanksgiving and all of the college football on the flip side and your half marathon. We will see you next Monday.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right. That's Abe Gordon, 92.9 The Game. And I know that you guys have been having a discussion here about players and contracts and all of that. So let's go there since and Hutch wants to know about TD. Hutch wants to know about the technical director candidate. And the prevailing wisdom is this. Chris Henderson from Inter Miami. And the reason that we mentioned Chris Henderson, and there has been no other names linked in any kind of a discussion one way or the other. The connections are there with Chris Henderson and his time with Garth Lagerwey in Seattle, where Chris Henderson was the number 2. Then Chris Henderson goes to Inter Miami. And so Abby has said, Chris has said his goodbyes on social. So Chris Henderson and his relationship with Garth makes the most sense. We have heard no other names. When you have instances reported by Tom Bogert at GMS that when Raul Sanlehi came in the door at Messi and Friends, he basically took over Chris Henderson's office. I don't know if that means that Chris Henderson ended up in a broom closet like Leslie in Ted Lasso when he was trying to find office space or anything like that. But when Raul Sanlehi came in, apparently he took Chris Henderson's office. That to me would be a big red flag. It's like, oh, I like your office. I'm going to take it. You can go over to the break room or whatever. So Chris Henderson right now would be the name that would be attached. No other names have been mentioned in any discussion one way or the other. So Abby has mentioned that Chris has said his goodbyes on social. So keep an eye on Chris Henderson with Messi and Friends, and you go from there. All right. So Omar is wanting to ask about the over-under and retaining half the roster. According to our friends at Spot Track, right here, here's what the contract situation is. And remember, you're looking at 16, 26. You're looking at 26 folks right now. 26 folks right now attached to the 25 roster. So let me look at the 24 roster real quick. So you have salaries and such, dead money attached to McFadden, Wiley, Almada, and Yakimakis, non-actives, Eric Centeno and Matt Edwards, and supplementals and such. So for 25 right now, Atlanta United total cap allocation 10th in Major League Soccer at just under $20 million. So the 25 right now, 25 senior rosters, Pedro Amador guaranteed through 26. Josh Cohen guaranteed through 25, club option for 26. Franco Ibarra club option for 25 is a U22. We know where that's going to go. Brooks Lennon guaranteed 25, club option 26. Miranchuk guaranteed for a couple of seasons. Mosqueda guaranteed for 25, club option for 26. Shande guaranteed for 25, club option for 26. Bart guaranteed a couple of seasons through 27, 28. And if I could turn this sideways, I'd probably have a better answer. Yes. So Bart guaranteed through 28. Miranchuk club option for 28. Amador club option for 27. Jamal club option for 25. Derek Williams guaranteed 25, club option for 26. Supplemental spots. Luke Brennan guaranteed for 3 years as a homegrown. Noah Cobb guaranteed for 25 and 6 as a homegrown. Nick Firmino guaranteed 25 and 26 as a homegrown. Efren Morales, club options for 25 and 26. Aiden Torres guaranteed through 27, club option 28. Tyler Wolf, club option for 25. Non-actives, Luis Abram guaranteed 25, club option 26. Centeno, club options 25 and 26. Jay Fortune, club option 25 and 26. Gregerson guaranteed through 27, club option for 28. I know this is a lot of information. Brad, club option 25. Ronald, club option 25. Saba guaranteed 25 and 26. Dax, club option 25. We know where that's going. Tristan, guaranteed 25 and 26, club option for 27. Santi Sosa, club option for 27. There is discussion in South America that Santi Sosa there have been terms agreed to in a transfer of 7 figures left of the decimal place. One DP, obviously, is Stian Gregerson. U22s, club options for Ibarra and Sosa. Mosqueda, the third U22, guaranteed 25, club option for 26. So that's where you go. But remember, and yes, Abby, I think that they'll get to the Jay Fortune situation. They'll get that squared away. But remember in all of this, we mentioned that a club, it doesn't matter who we're talking about, has a guarantee with a player through a certain time frame. All that means is that you control the asset. That's all that means. You can loan players out. You can, you can send them on their way in other ways, that kind of a thing. Just because you have a guarantee on a player does not mean that that player is guaranteed, if that makes any sense. So that is the roster situation, according to our friends at Spot Track, heading into 25 and 26 and beyond. Okay, so last night, Rob Valentino got to catch up with us on at his post-game press conference, and this was part of what Rob got to say. And first soundbite that we have, and they're fairly lengthy, but I think they're worth it. So we'll play a couple here, and then Bart will come on in about 7 minutes. Then we'll play more after Bart's over, but we're going to start with Rob. Rob mentions what happened the last 6 weeks and what it has meant for him and this group for this last 6 week run, and what it has meant.
I mean, I don't know. It's like I need time to really sit and reflect on everything, because it's not just the playoffs. Like we went on a run at the end, but I was just telling them in there, like I believed we could do that. Whether we kicked on later or people call luck, but I'll tell you what I am proud of is that no matter what, the team kept showing up and they kept working. They never gave in. Success at the end of this season for everybody in this league is winning MLS Cup. That's success on the outside. On the inside, it's there's other things that we deem successful. So I think there was success in a lot of ways of how we work, how we interact, and how we operate as a team, and that's something I'll take with me moving forward.
What is next for you? Is it just waiting?
I think I got to go home at 6:45 on the flight, and that's it.
No, but is it just waiting to find out if you got the job, or what do you do now, work-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I get on my flight, and that's really it. I mean, my contract's through December 31st, and I'm employed by Atlanta United right now, but that's it.
So that's the first stuff with Rob Valentino, where Rob is discussing what happened and what the future is for him. Then I asked him yesterday about all of the 17s that were there. And it was funny, but not surprising, where you had the loudness of the 17s washing over the loudness of the fans of the purple team, and seeing that brick of you. The funny thing to me in all of this was there were more security personnel in the 17s section, 6, than there were in the other end zone for the entirety of that end zone with ILF and the other supporters of the purple team, 2. And the 17s were making all of the noise early on. And it was for Maddie and me, who were down at the other end. Literally, we were stuck in the corner of the press box right next to the supporters for the purple team in that end zone. To hear all of you all the way from there, all the way through, it was a treat. Here's what Rob had to say about the 17s showing up.
I mean, the real big one is just thank you for everybody. I mean that. I said it to everybody that was been a part of it and been here for some of the journey. I'm appreciative. I'm grateful. I don't have like a great speech prepared for something like this, but I'm really grateful for all the support that they've shown the club, they've shown the players, myself, my family. I'm really grateful for them. They're some of the best fans in this league, and I wish I could contribute to more joyous moments. That's what I really want. I want to see them excited, celebrating, just back to what it really used to be like for those first 2 years, 3 years, and I want to contribute to that. So hopefully we're not done.
What did you think about what you saw up in the second deck today with all of that red there?
That was incredible. Walking in and they let them in early, and the Orlando fans said some nice things to me, so that was enjoyable. And just to hear them continuously shout was incredible. It means a lot. People pay. Adrian Heath told me this a long time ago. He's like, people use their hard-earned money to come watch you play. Like, you owe them something. And he was right in saying that. I know what I'm like with my own money, and I don't gamble it. I don't use it on things I don't value. And I'm really grateful that they take time out of their day. They put money aside to budget for something like this to come and support us. That I don't take for granted. So I'm really appreciative of them.
The Adrian Heath part of that soundbite sticks with me, where Rob understands people invest their hard-earned money to travel to a situation like Fort Lauderdale, like what we saw with the purple team on Sunday. That soundbite will resonate with me for quite some time, where Adrian Heath had a conversation with Rob Valentino about hard-earned money and understanding the value of the investment by the 17s in this case to work your way and be as invested as you are. That to me is going to stick with me for a while. And so in those sound bites, you heard the question about Rob's future. Rob's future was to get on a plane and get back home. But then the soundbite involving the 17s, that was something that will resonate with me for quite some time. Abby says the security was to keep the purple team fans out of their area. So that was, like I said, it was an interesting dynamic to see more security people in and around the 17s than there were in the other end zone. But apparently, from the conversation, looking at what Nix had to say, Nix was interacting with purple team fans, and you tipped your hats to each other. So you found the fans that are civil, because there are some in that group that are not. And when you have, and point being the announcement over the PA, where you had fans, and it's true it's true at every soccer stadium, as Michael says. As the fan of the Premier League and understanding, we've got to make sure that the away fans are sequestered. But yesterday, when you had the elements that were there involving completely and totally unoriginal thoughts, that's a word, unoriginable. It shows you how awake I am, and we'll get to Bart here in just a second. Unoriginable chants involving disparaging comments. It's like, can you just be a little bit more imaginative? Just saying. All right, 10 o'clock. A little after 10, I apologize to Bart because I've kept Bart an entire minute away from his time. So when did you get home, sir?
I got home at like 4:35. We arrived back at the stadium at 4:05 in that time frame.
Wow. I give you full credit, sir. I give you, and for those that may not know, it was an adventure for the 17s to get there with the buses. So from your anecdotal evidence, please explain how much of an adventure it was to get everybody there to be as loud as you were.
So we'll start from the beginning in that we obviously, Orlando is close enough that travel is doable. However, being on a Sunday, because MLS decided that we should play on a Sunday and not the Saturday, because they have zero ability to think strategically about scheduling games outside of TV money that doesn't exist anymore. We had to take this bus, and the bus, because the game is at 3:30, John, when you're chartering a bus this long of travel, like it's a 7-hour drive there and back, the drivers have to have time to rest. And so we had to leave early, which meant we had to leave there at 3 a.m. Atlanta time. And we were making okay time. We were a little late, but oh well. And we all stopped just as we got on the turnpike so that we could all change into our match day attire.
Okay.
And we stopped. We get ready to get back. We come back out. We get ready to get on the bus, and we notice that there are jumper cables from one bus attached.
No.
So one bus was broken down. 20 minutes from, luckily only 20 minutes from the bar that we were supposed to be at. So my bus was not affected by this, thankfully, and we were taken to the bar where I ran into your lovely face and other lovely faces from this here network. And the bus then went back to rescue the other 50 some people and bring them to the bar. Some people Ubered from said, travel stop to the bar because it was easier. So that was the first kind of hiccup. The problem then was obviously we had this broken bus. And how did they fix it? The buses were actually a little bit earlier than we thought, picking us up to go home. But we didn't really leave Orlando until about 8 o'clock. And that bus in particular, then we had to stop at a truck stop in Tifton, Georgia, to get a new bus for all those people.
Oh, no.
Because I don't know exactly why, but that was just like the schedule of things. So we had to get off. Well, again, my bus unharmed, thankfully. But yeah, so those people on bus 2 had they had an adventure of a day. Finally got home around 4 o'clock in the morning. So.
All right, so
I am tired.
No doubt. No, so
there and back, but not a lot.
No, and I also, if I'm not mistaken, I also hear the SO in the background off studio, who sounds like he's trying to recover from the weekend as well.
He's just waking up as well. So he doesn't have to work today, so he gets to wake up whenever he feels like it, which is
there. Nice. You go.
I, on the other hand, had to wake up, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I did allow myself a few extra snooze buttons from the normal time of awakening. Yeah.
Yes. When you look back as a 17, let me take your Soccer for US POD.
Oh, I get to talk about actual Atlanta United things for a second. All right.
So let me take your Soccer for US POD hat off for a second before we get into reffing down here, because there's plenty to get into that. Because you have thoughts and you told me so. When you look back at the last 6 weeks and what this run has been like, from your interactions with other supporters, what have been the main thoughts from supporters and such when it comes to the last 6 weeks?
Okay, well, I'll give the thoughts that I think supporters have, and then I'll give a little bit of my thoughts on it. But I think the most salient, that's the word I'm trying to use. Unoriginal, by the way, sounded like a Aussie word, so good for you. The most salient mood is that this is the Atlanta United we've been wanting to see. One that fights, one that plays with passion, one that makes our attention worthwhile. I think the unfortunate reality is that okay, now I'm getting into Bart's commentary, but
sure,
FBA works to an extent.
Sure, it does.
And at some point, you then have to apply some level of tactical nuance to FEA. And I think we kind of ran into, a team that was just better coached yesterday, unfortunately. Certainly better positioned to execute tactics that the coaches want for them. That is also helpful when, your opponents don't seek out and try to injure your two strikers. At least that's the story I'm telling myself. That happened yesterday. And, I think the fight, the passion, the overall excitement that the team provided over the past 2 months, really, I think I'll give them that, made us feel more connected, reconnected, and gives us some hope going forward. But now the sober reality of we still don't have a full-time head coach. We don't have a full-time chief soccer officer, whatever that's going to be. We still only have one designated player. And tomorrow by 1 o'clock, John, we got roster decisions, and there are several gentlemen on this roster that, to me, the 6 weeks of fighting hard does make up for the, in some cases, 3-4 years of middling play to begin with. And that's kind of where it's like, okay, that was fun, but now the expectation is back on the club to again prove that our attention, our money are worth it.
When you look back at the game in and of itself, this is where we turn to reffing down here. I want to, and you can.
It wasn't a penalty kick. I'll just put it that way. It may have been a foul, but I don't think it was really that big of a foul. So I'll just say that there.
Right. Yeah. The Jamal incident inside the 18.
It would have been. Yeah. I don't think that. I don't think that should have been called. We'll just put it that way.
Well, but the larger point that I wanted to get into with you this morning has to do with game management.
Mm-hmm.
And the consistency therein for a center ref.
Yeah.
If you are going to, and like I said, this is just looking at how Armando Villarreal administered to the match.
Yeah.
But it is not just this particular case that we are getting into as a part of this discussion. It has to do with game management, where if you are going to set a bar, keep that level, and don't differ from it, and don't go 180 and overcorrect and these kinds of things. Now that you've had a chance to nap after being there at the match,
I've taken exactly 2 naps.
Okay, so 2 naps. So since you have napped twice, when it comes to game management in a conference semifinal, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can be a hard ass and turn into a blackjack dealer and whistle everything, and it's like stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. or let the players do their thing and then navigate that road.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Armando had a bad day calling fouls and not fouls. I actually thought that he allowed play to be contested fairly for the most part. We had the one, I don't know what word you want to use. It wasn't a kerfuffle, but a slight overheated
A
moment.
coming together.
Yeah, and I thought he did a good job of just letting the players figure it out themselves. And as we talked about, they all kind of just stood back and said, "Okay, we're going to watch this and how it unfolds." And I don't think there was anything there that really needed a yellow card. I do think there were opportunities for him to give a yellow card to a certain player on the purple team who may or may not have been taking a decade or so every time the ball happened to go out of play for him to put it back in. There are multiple times, and again, remember that the time allowance for goalkeepers to have the ball in their hand is now up to 10 seconds. There were multiple times that was exceeded, and I do think that that was a missed opportunity. But I don't think Armando Villarreal had by any stretch. He did not impact the game one way or the other, which is I think what you want from a guy. In the center for a game as contentious as this, because this is also a rivalry. This is also not just a conference semifinal, but it's also a rivalry game, and that brings something into it as well. I mean, these teams met. My math, a little over a month ago, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Just that recently. That's fine.
Yeah. And in a very heated game as well, John. I think that's fair to say. That game, for at least for Atlanta United, meant a lot, right? And so I thought he did a decent job. Again, I thought the one or two times that there were like things that happened, he did a good job. And even the one that, like I joked, they were trying to hurt Jamal. But the incident where Jamal got hurt, like I thought he did a great job of applying advantage. Did we do a good job of applying the advantage? No. But Jamal's it was very clear, and he said it. But then he was like, "Well, you got a breakaway," and that was the only way that Atlanta United was going to score yesterday. And unfortunately, we didn't do a great job.
Then there was the other element that's attached to navigating a match, where you can do whiplash, you can do one of two things. I don't think we saw from Armando Villarreal a 180. I don't think that you had that, and I don't think in the second half he tried to overcorrect. It was still, I'm sure it was just as frustrating at points for a lot of other folks in the second half as it was for the first half, but I don't think he completely overcorrected and started going blackjack dealer and issuing cards. He didn't do that.
No. Again, I think there were opportunities. He probably could have given a yellow card or two to Orlando. Again, one for time wasting, and probably one for a foul or two that maybe could have gotten, I guess, crossed over that line, right? But I don't think there were really even that many fouls that needed to be given like straight yellow cards in this game. I thought the one that he gave to us on Derek Williams was pretty much like, yes, yellow card. And so I thought he did a decent enough job in a very difficult spot.
When you are in a rivalry game, when you're in the middle, how do you add that heat to how you are planning on managing a match?
Well, that goes into your preparation, right, John, where you try to understand what beef the teams have, because it's not just always proximity. It's also the fact that you got to look back at recent match history. And again, these two teams played recently, literally the last game of the season. So that is always going to be somewhat of a contentious match, especially for two clubs that are, most of the time always fighting for playoff spots and playoff positioning. Orlando, I mean, granted, it didn't hurt them at all because they're going to host the Eastern Conference Final, even though they don't deserve it because that fan base doesn't deserve any nice things happening. But they were vying for, they wanted to secure their spot. Basically, I think they still needed to not lose to ensure they had the 4th seed. I forget exactly what this, but you go back and look at that, but then you also look at the overall tenor of the rivalry, and I do think it's fair to say this rivalry has cooled off a little bit since both Miami came into the league, and then Atlanta has gained Nashville and Charlotte as more proximate rivals, if I can say that. Especially for Charlotte, who thinks that we're the only team that exists in the league and we're the only ones worth beating. But you do look at past history of the matches. You do, especially because with these teams, we know there's history between the teams, but then you have new players coming in and out. So you have to kind of look at what players may have had some things in the past. I mean, Gaese is a guy who seems to find himself in the middle of things more often than good. Schlegel is a heated player. So part of it is just personality assessments too, and understanding that. I mean, again, I thought he did a decent enough job understanding that it's both a rivalry and a conference semifinal. But yeah, when you go into a game and hey, this is a rival. I mean, having played in some of those, especially in college, we had teams that we hated not because they were next door to us, mainly because we could always beat Catawba, but we had a long-standing rivalry with Mars Hill was one. They were close, but we just didn't like them. They were kind of a bunch of hillbillies. And then we had a long-standing rivalry with Carson Newman because we had, I think, in that before I went to LR, we had about 5 years in a row, I think, where we played each other in a conference tournament at some point. And so, yes, it's conference rival, but we're not close. They're all from Jefferson City, Tennessee, which don't go if you don't have to. And so
as Bart freezes, or it might be me.
Yeah, so I don't know. Are you back?
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry, I was trashing Carson Newman, so probably that's why.
Yeah, the Carson Newman police came in and took care of you.
But yeah, no, the point is, rivalries are, you have to go back and look at kind of the games that they played before then, because if we had played New York Red Bulls, we know that rivalry exists because of specifically the tenor of the games that we play, right? And it's not because we're close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's because every time that, well, not recently, but most of the times when we played Red Bulls, they've had a player or 5 who deserve to get sent off and somehow don't because they just flirt with that line. And, that as a referee, you have to also understand that players are going to get heated, but you have to be the babysitter, unfortunately.
To your point, and I want to talk about that line with our next topic here. 12 fouls called by Villarreal the entire match. 12.
Yeah. Probably could have been more, let's be honest.
Yeah. 7 for Orlando, 5 for Atlanta United, and the 1 yellow card goes to Derek Williams for the tackle. And so, and you look at it, you sit there and go, okay, he got the ball first, but just because you get to the ball first, your follow through is part of that also. And it was a hard challenge post contact with the Adidas soccer ball. So I get it. I understand why that was called. When it came to the NWSL championship, full disclosure, Nick and I were watching that match, and there were players that did more than flirt with that line that you talk about when it came to administration of whistles and fouls and cards and things. And I guess this is something that we can look at going forward in a couple weeks' time when you're in a title game. How is a title game managed? And there were some moments in the NWSL championship game where I would think under normal circumstances, you're talking yellow, you're talking 2 yellows and a red in quick succession, but then you don't want to chuck a championship game being 11v11. That's a difficult thing to sit there and go, okay, I want to keep this 11v11 because it's a championship game. But then if something is over the line and it is more than a flirt, I mean, it is a full blown, I'm leaving you my number on a napkin and handing it to you at the bar. It was an entirely different situation in the NWSL Championship.
Yeah, I think when you're, I think it still applies when you're talking about playoffs versus finals, right? Where you want the players to be the ones to decide the outcome on the field. But as I will always tell the young referee that I've worked with who's working a final or a heated game for the first time, sometimes the players make it really easy for you to make a decision. And I think that's something that personally I try to keep up with is like, there are some things that we have within our game that are like 100% yellow cards that as referees we need to be mindful of. A lot of those are procedural things, right? Delaying the restart of play because you didn't respect the 10-yard distance, right? That's one. Coming onto the field without permission. The Sophia Smith hiding a ball underneath a chair. Those are like, okay, these are yellow cards. We're fine. But anytime that you talk about what's going on the field of play, in a final like that, especially, you want to make sure that this player, you don't want to, you personally as a referee don't want to impact the match. And let's be honest, red cards would impact the match. However, as we saw, we'll go back basically a whole calendar year, John, to the last NWSL final, right, where we had a red card because of a foul that was dog-so, and we had a keeper taken out, and that drama from last year with Gotham winning. That is one of those where you go, yes, this is an absolute red card. I must give it. And I think that's the thing as referees. You want to just make sure that you don't want to leave yourself as the talking point. And do I think that the referee crew and the NWSL final did a good job of removing themselves as the talking point? No, John, I don't. And I think that's kind of the problem is like, yes, red and yellow cards we can talk about, but oh boy, I think they misapplied some laws of the game. And we can talk about that next.
Go for it. Yeah.
All right. So overall, I know Spirit had some questions about the refereeing, and look, they lost. So I feel somewhat aggrieved, but they didn't score any goals, and that's on them. However, Orlando's goal, while a beautiful, beautiful individual effort by Barbara Banda, the person who set her up threw a hand in the face of a player. Now, to me, that is a foul. And I'll tell you why it's a foul, John. That is one of those things where we don't want that to happen in the game. I don't think it was necessarily intentional, and this is like, oh, now we got to look at a yellow card, right? That it was that careless, reckless, excessive force type stuff. We're not that. I don't think we rose too far on that checklist. But John, putting hands in someone's face, that is a foul. That's a foul in every sport.
That's a damn good stiff arm that started that.
Yeah. And so when the commentary team, headed by Miss Christina Uncle in this case, says that foul doesn't rise to the level of clear and obvious to take away a goal. I just disagree, and I know Miss Uncle's job is to stick up for the referees, so I appreciate that. That's not my job in this case. So I think that was a missed foul, and in a foul especially that then contributed to the buildup of the play, right? This wasn't a shoulder-to-shoulder challenge. It wasn't even like, look, TRA's not foul in the box yesterday. I don't think that at all lived up to any clear and obvious foul had that been even adjudged to be a foul, right? That was not clear and obvious. This was clear and obvious. We have it in 4K at least 1080p that she backhanded her in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of those where it's not a shoulder check, it's not even a hip check or a slight little elbow to the back. Even that was a pretty clear and obvious, in my opinion, foul.
No, this was a flat one of these.
Yeah. That is, to me, meets the level of no, you fouled her. And then again, when it was because of that advantage she gained, she was then able to give the assist to the goal. I think they botched it, to be quite honest.
And then you get into the notion of, once again, where we loop back, of championship game, national television audience.
I don't think that matters, because in that case, you take away a goal, John, but like it was a foul. It was a foul.
Then let me ask you this, from an emotional standpoint. Why are you not, and this may be the most simplistic question that I ask, but why do you not pull the trigger on something like that?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know, John, because to me that should have been called back as a foul. That was a very plain and obvious foul. And again, it's not one of those even that you can say, well, you know, maybe it was a foul, maybe it wasn't. It was so clear as day. And for it to directly impact the ball, that, you know, it was, that foul led to the assist that led to the goal.
Right.
And while yes, you do want to allow players to decide the game on the field, VAR exists for a reason too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you don't want them to gain unfair advantages from that kind of thing. And that was, again, I think it was just she gained an unfair advantage by slapping a girl in the face. Whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. I'm not here to judge.
But that should be irrelevant to the argument.
It is irrelevant to the argument, John. You know, it was very clearly a foul. So I don't know. I don't know. I genuinely do not know, John.
When you have moments like this, and Rich makes the point, title games need leeway, at least get to the line. In that instance, I think that you pole vaulted over it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that the line was crossed.
Sure.
And because that should have been called, that is the type of foul that should be called in the grand scheme of play. Now, again, I don't think that is a yellow card. I think if that were to have been called in the grand scheme of play, there probably would have been a little bit of like, how, you know, some words probably would have been exchanged, and as the referee, you just kind of he's calm. You know, you do the LeBron James press down celebration type thing a couple times, and you manage it in that way. But that was a management opportunity that you missed. And again, to me, it's a foul. I don't know why they didn't call it a foul, John. I don't know why they didn't go back and call it a foul. That is not re-refereeing, in my opinion. That is a very clear and obvious foul that the referee missed.
By the way,
she's had finals this year. That's the thing. This should not have been new for her.
By the way, in the match of the NWSL Championship, 27 fouls called, 16 on Orlando, 11 on Washington. 4 of the 11 fouls on Washington were resulted in yellow cards. Only 2 of the 16 for Orlando for yellow cards.
Yeah. Look, you can get into the difference between proportionality. Proportionality is one thing, but like sometimes you get yellow card fouls. I'm sorry, you know, that's kind of where it is. To be honest,
and that was kind of what I wanted to get into at times. I don't think there is a causational relationship in the proportion.
Hal Hirschfeld's foul that she got a yellow card for.
Yes,
going to the timeline. That's a yellow card. She put her studs close to someone's. You know, it was within the realm of playing the ball, but you know, she had her foot was higher than it should have been, and it went into someone's upper calf, knee area. That's a yellow card.
Yeah,
that's a yellow card. That is. Yeah, you know, so if you want to judge proportionality, then that's fine. But like you committed more yellow card fouls than they did, and that's just kind of where it goes. Again, I think a lot of will be made of the refereeing in that final. I think when you looked at that game, though, the story was, to me, Washington needed someone else on that field who wasn't just Trinity Rodman to help make things happen. And they kind of started to rely on a woman whose back was giving out on her as we were watching her play. And they didn't have anyone else to support her. They needed they needed a Croy Bethune, who obviously is injured. But they needed someone else because they weren't getting it from Sanchez. They weren't getting it much from Hatch, in the way that they needed to. Similar to Atlanta United needed someone other than just Saba to do things yesterday. And both times for Orlando, they had more support. And to be fair, Orlando Pride has Barbara Banda. She's really good.
Yes.
But, I think Washington has some right to feel aggrieved by the goal that they conceded. But at the end of the day, you didn't score any. And you're not going to win by not scoring.
I want to ask about. I think we're okay when it comes to national team discussions. I think we're kind of in a Thanksgiving lull. Everybody's going to their El Tryptophan when it comes to the men's national team and the women's national team.
Yeah. We got a game Saturday, but I think that's just more like, hey, it's fine.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about that next Monday. Marta, I want to ask about her and her impact. First off, do you think she's done, considering that her mom got to watch her for the first time and she won a title?
If I were her, I'd be done. Go out on it as a winner. I do think that there's a level of you would probably want a celebration tour, but she can do that in Orlando. I don't think she has any plans to not live in Orlando. I don't know why you wouldn't. Compared to where you could live. Although Rio is beautiful, I hear, but I feel like Orlando is probably a little bit slightly better location to live. But especially when you built a life there for what, 6, 7 years, 8 years? I forget.
8 years, yeah, 8 years.
It's hard to encapsulate the impact that Marta has had on women's soccer. Because longevity is one part of it. And I think that's the thing that we can start at is she's played. I mean, I can't recall much time without her, right? Literally. I started watching, I can remember watching this game in 1999. And then she came onto the scene 3 years later, finally came on 4 years later in the next World Cup. She's been one of the most electric soccer players, period, for her entire career, which she proved again in that semifinal matchup with a fantastic goal. She is more than just a phenomenal player, though, and you see how much of a leader she is when she plays for Brazil, when she plays for Orlando, and how people around her want to play well with and for her. And that speaks to the impact she has had on women's sport. I mean, she is in many ways forced the Brazilian Federation to give a damn, mainly because she's like, well, I give a damn and you're missing out on me, 3 gold medal finals, unfortunately hadn't won any, a World Cup final. She gave Brazilian women, and to be fair, Brazilian soccer, some of its highs that it's had in the last 2 decades. I mean, I know the men's team won a gold medal and they were in, they've had not successful, they haven't won, but they've had deep World Cup runs. But their women's team has been very darn good over the past 20 years, and it's because Marta. I pray that she will continue to be a part of this sport because the sport needs her. Not just the women's, not on the sport of soccer needs Marta. Because someone with that much passion and dedication to their own craft and so much passion and dedication to the sport needs to stay around. And do I think she should retire? I would, because I would retire a champion. But we need her in this sport. I hope FIFA hires her tomorrow. Seriously. Because we need her voice, her perspective, her wisdom to help guide the sport, not just on the women's side, but the sport as a whole.
What else is going on with the Soccer for US POD? I'm letting you get in a nap now. I'm not going to hold you.
Gonna try to record today or tomorrow about the women's national team roster and friendlies because we got some interesting names on the roster, John. I think that's talked about a little bit, but you've got Fallon Tullis-Joyce, who's probably the best.
Episode CIV, baby.
Yeah, CIV coming up, 105. Yeah, I mean, look, we've got possibly a goalkeeping battle going on. I don't necessarily know what Emma's plans are for the goalkeeper she brought in, but she has spoken very highly of Fallon, and specifically in her press conference. I think it was mainly because she was asked about her, but she was talking about wanting to see certain things from her that, in my opinion, you kind of need to see in a game state. And I think if you look at the succession plan, now, sure, Alyssa Nair is great, but we got a World Cup in 3 years, and Alyssa Nair is going to be pushing. Actually, she's going to be on the wrong side of 40. Casey Murphy.
There is no wrong side of 40, sir.
Casey Murphy has failed to grasp the number one spot. I guess the number two spot, but you know what I mean? Like that next. Yeah, no one has pushed Alyssa Nair out of goal. And it has been Casey Murphy's to do. So you've got Fallon Tullis-Joyce. So we really want to, I mean, not to spoil it, but that'll be the conversation going into and out of it is there someone else behind Alyssa Nair? And is it Fallon Tullis-Joyce, who right now is the best goalkeeper in the WSL? She had a really stellar goalkeeping record. Unfortunately, Chelsea's also fairly stellar and took care of Manchester United on the weekend. But that's the storyline, is you've got goalkeeping. You've got back-to-back Defender of the Years who should be starting next to each other with Sams and Gurma. No triple espresso, which is kind of this will be a talking point too, is how much do you make out of these games without your three best attackers? And even behind that, not really a number 9. Because Shaw, not really a 9. Lynn Williams, not really a 9. Probably both of them will play the 9. But you don't even have Kat Macario because apparently Chelsea is, being extra careful, and then careful. Be official who's also hurt. So that's kind of that storyline, John, is a lot of new faces, a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rich. I'll never miss an opportunity to remind someone that Manchester United lost.
Well, as always, my friend, it's great to have you here on Mondays to discuss things, and that's the official term, because there's always stuff to talk about, and can't wait for the next episode of Soccer for US POD, episode CIV. Go get in your nap number 3, and
I think I'm going to try to push till noon, get a little bit of work done.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit of work done, maybe some lunch. Yes, I understand where you are coming from. It's great to see you yesterday. Abby loved your response in our quiz. And
I love the movie The Jungle Book. That's a great movie. And Brad being a little bit of a El Pantera in goal. Sorry, John. I feel bad for Brad because that goal was.
Everybody's crashing forward. It comes off a back shoulder, and Enrique is the one that crashes through. And
that was like the worst corner kick they had all day. Too.
Well, and
they were very dangerous.
I think it's safe to say that 9 times out of 10 that doesn't happen. It just so happened that Enrique crashed the gate, and he got through on that 1 of 10. But, so that's what it's about. Moments. We always talk about moments.
He's kind of been the guy who's. Okay. I'm going to request this. I would like to be part of some of the roster discussions when we get there for Atlanta United. And I'll just say this about Brad, though. I'm not saying I want him to retire. If I were Brad, I would wonder how much more I can give after this season. That would be the question I have to ask myself. And I mean that sincerely because he gave a lot. And does he want to come back around for better? He does, but I would be asking. I'm wondering. I am wondering. He's going to hit the off season, and I'm just wondering if it might be something where he goes, "Oh, you know what? Taking a ball or 10 or 100 to the body every day, I'd rather just stay at home with the kid. I'm just wondering, because he has given so much this past year. Now that said, if he does decide to retire, or when he decides to retire, there better be a assistant director of goalkeeping job in the academy waiting for him immediately.
Oh yeah.
So I forget who said it in the chat, but like, yeah, Martha needs to be hired by Orlando for whatever.
Yes.
Director of soccer.
Grand Exalted Poobah of soccer for
Director of
Orlando.
Samba,
Yes.
for Marta.
Director of Samba for Orlando Pride.
But I was one of the ones who thought Brad should have retired earlier in the season. He definitely picked it up, and I think he should be proud of himself. But I do just have to wonder how much he has left to go. Because I know he says it now. We've got a long off season coming.
Oh, I know. And so we have 48 hours, and then we'll have discussions here as to what's going on with roster decisions and such. And obviously, we'll get into that.
Is it tomorrow?
48-hour window after the end of your season.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so yeah.
So I think you have up until 48 hours after the end of your season to make your decisions, and so that puts it late Tuesday night. So we'll see what Atlanta United has in mind, and obviously it'll probably end up being a talking point on Wednesday's show.
Well, I'm working from home all week, so if you need,
there you go. Yes, so we will definitely, and then we'll ask you what's going on with Thanksgiving. As always, my friend, great to see you, and we will catch up with you when we knock on your door and go, we need your assistance on multiple topics and things like that. But
thanks y'all for making this season bearable.
Well, but it's, hey, look, like 7 weeks before training camp. It is, and it's going to be 5 because of holidays. And so trust me, it's going to come back very, very quickly.
And we will have multiple newses
breaking
before then, John.
We will have multiple newses, as Bart says.
Looking forward to your coverage.
Yes. Yeah, the unoriginal thoughts of multiple newses. Absolutely.
Multiple newses.
Yes. All right. Go work for an hour and 20 minutes and get in a nap.
Bye, y'all.
All right, there goes Bart. So Bart is going to go get in his nap. All right, so let's get back to the sound from yesterday. And since we were discussing Brad Guzan, let's get into the comments of Brad Guzan. First comment from Brad has to do with the 2 seasons. And we've had that discussion as kind of an underlying theme here this morning. So the 2 seasons where everything up until this last 6 weeks and then the last 6 weeks. So here's Brad Guzan from last night.
How the regular season played out and what happened over the last 3 weeks. It's almost like 2 different little, one really long season and then one mini season. There were certainly differences. I've always said once you get in the playoffs, it's a whole nother beast. Anything can happen, and so unfortunately tonight we couldn't find the equalizer. We couldn't, attacking wise, we didn't really create a whole lot in the attacking third.
Didn't create a whole lot in the attacking third. So that's Brad off of that conversation. Now, second comment from Brad has to do with his takeaways from this run. And so here's what Brad had to say about that after the match last night.
Yeah, the character of guys, and you look at how the season played out. You look at things that happened through the season. We should have, could have, would have through the regular season in terms of finding more of that character that we saw over the last 3-4 weeks. But then to kind of see it all come together, albeit for a shorter run that we would have liked, that part is something that I'll certainly take away from how these last few weeks played out in terms of the feelings, the positivity, the good vibes, as the kids say these days. There were some special moments over the course of the last couple of weeks, and that's something I'll certainly take away.
You know this club as well as anybody. Do you feel like this run and the way that 2024 ends, getting ready to start looking ahead to 25, do you feel like it's back in a good place moving forward?
Yeah, listen, the thing about the end of the season, there's always change. we know for a fact that group in that locker room will not be together because of Dax, right? Dax has announced his retirement, and so there's one change, right? So that whole group in there will not be the same come the start of preseason, and you'd be naive to think that there's not going to be more changes, right? And so when you then say, is the club in a good spot to move forward, there's going to be, it's a whole new book that gets opened come 2025. The book of 24 gets closed and a new one opens. And so there will be pieces from 24 that carry on into 25. But more or less, it's a whole new book. So.
More or less, it's a whole new book. Brad Gazan. So then the other conversation that we had as part of the post game, and you'll have on soccerdownhere.net, there will be a breakout piece on Dax McCarty. And we will have that piece later this week. We're going to have the wrap-up piece on soccerdownhere.net coming up in just a little bit. And sorry, I'm preparing a banner. So what you will have is an opportunity to find out what it was like for Dax McCarty to play his last match in Major League Soccer. So we asked Dax in his post-game press conference what it was like for him in the match when the light board went up and he was being substituted off. So here is what Dax McCarty had to say about seeing that light board go up and knowing that he was going to be subbed out in what could have been and what eventually did end up being his last match in Major League Soccer after a 19-year career.
Yeah, I mean, not a big surprise. You know, I have felt like I could play 90 minutes this year, and I have played 90 minutes this year. But in the playoffs and towards the end of games, you know, I've been subbed out in every game, and especially in a game like this where we needed a goal. Look, it made sense, and so tactically, you know, I think about it probably too much from a soccer perspective and not from an emotions perspective. So it made sense tactically, but it hurt for sure coming out of the game, knowing we were down 1-0 and wanting to make a difference, wanting to help us get back in the game, and wanting to give absolutely every ounce of energy that I had. And I still felt like I had a little bit more to give, but that's soccer, and that's competing. You never question your coaches, and certainly when I went off and sat on the bench, reality hits that, look, we could get back in this game, but it could also be the last time I step on the field. And so as the clock ticked down, it got a little bit more real and a little bit more emotional. And then when the final whistle blows, it's bittersweet, really more bitter in the moment. But you look up in the stands and it ends where it began, with, you know, my family around and my parents there and my brother there and some of my best friends I grew up with there and my kids there. And I think just really felt a lot of gratitude in the moment and a lot of pride.
A lot of gratitude in the moment and a lot of pride. Dax McCarty hanging it up after 19 years in Major League Soccer. And obviously, like I said, you'll get the end of season piece later today at soccerdownhere.net. We have a breakout piece on Dax McCarty. And when Brad was tagging out and Dax was coming in, Brad's going down the hall. He's getting ready because they're trying to get out the door by 6:45. And I think we wrapped up with Dax McCarty at 6:43. And then Dax was getting ready to go, I imagine, go and hang out with family and such. Brad's going down the hall. And I don't think I'm talking out of school here because this is how I'm going to start the Dax McCarty piece. But Brad's going down the hall and Dax is coming in. And Dax is like, I've been waiting for a half an hour goes and sits down. You hear Brad as he's walking down the hall away from the locker room going, "Love you, Daxie." And so it took Dax back a bit. And then he got into his press conference, and obviously you'll hear more about what was said in that press conference in the written form here at soccerdownhere.net a little later on this week. All right, so let me say hi to everybody and get into your thoughts and comments as we go here this morning. And I need to break down the week, actually, and also need to do that too. So tomorrow we'll discuss Atlanta United more and continue to see whatever's on your mind as we go into the Thanksgiving Day week. 10 o'clock hour is going to be specifically USL based. Matt Valentine, one of the co-founders of the new project in Garland, Texas, USL Dallas, he's going to be joining us at 10 o'clock. And Kaylor Hodges joining us at 10:30 to break down the new champion in USL Championship for the USL Championship. Dominating performance by Colorado Springs. And we'll get into his postseason awards, starting 11 of the year, surprises, disappointments, all that kind of stuff as Kaylor wraps up his run involving USL Championship and USL League One. Then Wednesday, this is where things kind of get a little off kilter and we got to figure out the menu. Tyler's going to join us at 9:15 for the Atlanta United Information Exchange Program, as he always does. Then I've got to figure out what's going on. If Dylan Butler can join us, then we'll track down Dylan. If Marion Crowder can join us before Thanksgiving, that's great. What I'm going to try to do, because Thursday being American Thanksgiving, we're going to have some shows that are going to be rerunning on the network on the audio side. So some of your favorites, the Soccer Over There's, the All-Star Fixes, those kinds of things, they'll be up on the network, and we'll release them throughout the day so you can have your Thanksgiving Day be the SDH experience that it always is. So we're going to come up with some of our greatest hits, and we'll play some of those shows on the app for your listening pleasure to get you through your Thanksgiving Thursday. Then Friday, I'm going to see if we can get Nino and Nico to go on Friday, considering it would be Thursday traditionally. See if we can get them to go Friday, because in this way Nico can talk about Seattle making its way through in the semifinal, beating LAFC. And so the number 1 seed in the West goes away. And the number 2 seed knocks off Minnesota 6-2, 2 goals scored after a red card with 8 minutes to go. And so you've got LAG and Seattle in the Western Conference Final. You have Red Bulls making their way to Orlando for the Eastern Conference Final. I'm going to see if we can push Nino and Nico to Friday in the 10 o'clock hour so we can wrap up our week getting ready for what's going on in MLS Cup playoffs and get fully loaded with our buddy Nino Torres in the 10 o'clock slot. And I may give our friends from Beyond Goals the week off, considering it's Black Friday, and we'll see how everybody's going to be shopping and all that kind of stuff. So that's the rundown of the week right now as it's being seen. Once again, Thursday's going to be replays and reruns. We'll get some of our fun programming out there, and we'll let you guys have fun. But the biggest thing is we're going to see if we can swing Nino and Nico to Friday and have them on Black Friday to discuss playoffs and what's going on in their minds. So that's that rundown. Okay, so trying to see what thoughts are. Pars, big difference between us and Orlando. Have 2 roster spots not filled. They had money buys talent missing a few million. That's part of it. Michael Head, thanks to the team for bringing us some joy in the last month. And Abby, injuries hurt the drive. Also feel the international break slowed our momentum. That is a viewpoint that some fans have been saying. Abby is not alone in that assessment. And Pars is thinking it's going to be Red Bulls and LAG. I don't think you're wrong. I think that Red Bulls can expose the purple team for their lack of offensive desire, I'll say at points. I think that Red Bulls can frustrate Orlando, and I think that probably it's going to end up being Red Bulls and LAG. Nick was in the airport along with Maddie. 4 o'clock flight. Nick's, I'm a little later than you, but I've got to do some things involving Georgia Public for the high school stuff. That's going to be in the 1 o'clock hour. So when that's done at 2 o'clock, that's when I'm heading to the airport and dropping off the rental car. The rental car, by the way, was a surprise. The rental car, by the way, was a Dodge Charger. I did not plan that. What I do, and I don't know if you guys do the same thing, when you go on the road and you're going on vacation, everything, what I try to do is I just try to get a car. Give me a Sentra, get me an Accord, get me a Nissan Altima, something that can get me from point A to point B. And so, of course, they run through all of the lower cost automobiles, therefore they have to upgrade you. I get upgraded to a Dodge Charger, a 4-door Dodge Charger, V8 engine, growls and rumbles and the whole thing. Maddie and Nick, I'm shocked, don't have pictures. And I'm still trying to navigate the toll system because I didn't know how that worked, considering I thought that you put money in the slot or you hand it to the person. Then there's no person in the toll booth. Nick's like, no, go ahead and drive through. All right, so I'm learning more and more every day. And I think the $3 in tolls that are going to be added to the rental car bill will be very, very interesting as we go. I'd mentioned Nick's giving kudos to the Purple Team fans after the match. And yes, you could also, and OG says you could hear the chanting on TV from both the 17s, I would imagine, and from the unimaginative, colorful chants that we heard from the Purple Team fans. Blank you a-hole on goal kicks. Smart stuff. Yes, and then when there were saves, Phoenix does admit that, yes, there were saves that came through. Yes, and yeah, the Orlando nastiness was present. They do, in fact, hate Brad. Hutch, what we did on, sorry about angles here. What I do, Hutch, in these situations is I will defer to local radio. So if TV's sound, I don't want to hear it, and I want to hear the local, like I did with LAFC in Seattle here in the hotel room. What I do is I'll just click local audio and listen to local play-by-play. So I get to listen to Dave Denholm in that match with LAFC in Seattle. So if the sound dies on the TV side, I always go to local audio. I always go to local audio anyway, but it gives you an option to do. So let's see, there's the foul language announcement. Yeah, Abby being up. Like I said, I give all of you 17s credit for being up here this morning. So it's full credit to all of you. And no, Michael, I do not believe that the organization is going to forget the first 3 quarters of the season by any stretch. And Abby's like, if it's the choice for Rob, it's got to be made now. And Omar says it sucks that it ended this way. Don't think that anyone's going to walk away with bad feelings. I think that a lot of folks are going to sit there and remember the last 6 weeks, but they're not going to forget. And if this makes any sense, they're not going to forget the last 6 weeks, but they're also not going to forget what led up to that last 6 weeks and then turning the corner. So everybody talking about the offseason and the roster decisions coming up to all of the Atlanta United offseason stuff that is there. Michael on Knicks with the PK. I could, if going, and this was why I wanted to bring Bart in to discuss game management, because if you're going to call things a certain way, then you don't call that PK. So the PK late, Michael discussing with Knicks, but I think that if you're going to manage a game a certain way, then to be consistent, you're not going to call that particular play with Jamal going down in the box as a penalty. So I don't think that the penalty is going to get called in that manner. Shonday, sorry. So yeah, and seen Les called a penalty. 1 card, but it was once again 12 fouls called in its entirety. 12 fouls called in the match. That is low for any match. So, and that's the thing. Alex, he thought that Armando Villarreal was even letting them play. And that's the thing. If you're going to do that in the first half, if you're going to let things get physical, get chippy, people get in people's faces, okay, cool. I just don't want to see you go 180 in the second half. But Villarreal, 12 fouls the entire match. He did keep it even. And OG says that Villarreal is a bit of a peacock. And Abby, I did make this point to I did make this point to Maddie that when there was the starting of the comings together, kind of like Poets Laureate comings together, that you did see. I thought that Armando Villarreal lost the match late first half because he wasn't acting on all of the comings together and all of the pushing and the shoving and getting in people's faces. But if you manage it consistently that way and you keep an eye on things, I mean, there were things that I thought were fouls that Villarreal didn't call for fouls, but he was consistent in that. That's what I want. I just want consistency. If you're off the rails consistent, fine. If you're a blackjack dealer consistent, fine. Just don't be one way and then go 180 half to half. That's pretty much what I'm looking for. Saba kept getting cleaned out. That was one of the things that I thought that Saba was getting fouled consistently, but once again, Villarreal was consistent about not calling those instances. So there you go. Let's see. Beginning of both halves, got both the strikers injured both times. Let's see. And Michael says, dumb, the league sets up the schedule in such a way that the most important games of the year are influenced by an international break. Okay. I mean, right now you're in a TV universe. Derek thinks the TRA foul and injury completely changed the game. I think you're right. I think that when Jamal got dinged up in the first half, I think that once again, Rob had to change things with Daniel, and then Daniel was in there for 4 minutes because of the concussion in the second half. But Jamal getting chopped down a couple times and not being able to finish because he was your hot hand up top. I think that did change things. Abby said the field sucked, divots all over. Field work Goose had to do after the goal was in the front row. It was awful. It was not pretty. There was a lot of sand. There was not a whole lot of grass that was there. And this will be the question, I guess, for the next couple of days. Nick says, who in the Twitch pitch thinks Rob gets the job? So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. Remember, 48 hours for players. And you're looking at those kinds of things. Let's see. Like I said, I'm scanning and I'm trying to see if I've missed anybody saying hi this morning. And so there's Omar with our discussion. And Abby, this was cool. Matt Edwards behind the wall to say thank you to the 17s last night after the match, like right there after the twos games. Yeah, and no, I don't think they're going to let go of Jay Fortune. I don't think that's possible. Rich says you only find trouble if you look for it. Sometimes trouble finds you. And there are groups here in this particular fan base, with the Purple Team fan base, they go looking for trouble. There's social media where, and it's historic. You have to go back and look for it. But there are times where there are fans in the fan base here in Central Florida that destroy stadia and think that that's cool, and beating up fans from other teams, they think that's cool. So that has happened. That has happened here. And Michael, is not sure why MLS fans, they think the security thinks MLS fans are more rabid than SEC fans. Michael left the away section in Nashville because supporters were chanting inappropriate things toward Nashville fans. And so, like I said, there are in each all. There are all in each. Sorry. That kind of goes with unoriginable. It's been one of those mornings where you're trying to figure out words and everything. Rich Ransom with a quick bus story. DCOA, bus to go home, no AC. Have to wait for the new bus. Driver says, his time's up, right when the new bus is close. Have to wait for it longer for a new bus and a driver. 7:30 game, 3-hour drive. Don't get home till 5. So there's not a surprise. It is adventures in fandom. Absolutely true. Morning Ropes, by the way. I don't think I had the chance to get to see Ropes. No shots on target. And I think that if you looked at things dimensionally, and it was a point that I made on our social media reports, they were trying to make sure that Janssen and the right-hand side of their back line was making sure that Pedro Amador could not create. And it took a while to get into the second half before Amador could get into spaces and create the way that we're used to seeing him create on a game-by-game basis. I think that they made a point to try to take Pedro Amador away from the Atlanta United offense. And so when you don't have a striker and you're still trying to sit there and you pin the left back who's been pinging some great crosses in his time as a starter, then you're forcing others to create. And so I think that was just one of the things that I noticed anyways. We were looking at the match. I know that we're getting close to the fourth, holding up the board, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow, obviously at 9:05, and we'll continue to go through all of your thoughts. So David is saying I need to clip the Marta take about Brazil, so I will write that down. Marta on women's soccer from World Cup take. I'll clip that and I'll put that in the stacks. All right, so I'm trying to see. So Abby and there was a discussion about goalkeeping, and right now it's 110 M32 and Josh and Rich asking about Josh Cohen. Right now, the goalie situation is this: Brad's your number one, Josh Cohen's your number two, Jaden Hibbert's your number three, working with the twos, and Jaden Hibbert has been challenging. He got some time with Birmingham Legion, and then I think that he kind of turned it up a notch with his loan in USL Championship to get reps with Jay Heath. So I think that the goalie discussion will be an interesting discussion, the keeper discussion next season, because of Jaden Hibbert and his continued evolution, and Josh Cohen and Brad Gazan. So we'll see what that is. But yeah, so Jaden Hibbert with the twos. I think Quentin Westberg will be a question going into next season. But Jaden Hibbert, Josh Cohen, Brad Gazan. I think those are the three that you're staring at. Apple and Away Radio Audio. What that is you're taking another set of audio cables and inputs and trying to orient them into the truck. That's what that is. When Apple feels comfortable that they have the access to the technology and the space in the production truck to have that as a separate option, something they need to work on quick. But it literally, when you're on site, there are some venues that can do it and some venues that can't, some trucks that can do it and some trucks that can't. So you have to have the universality of the audio being able to be taken from Away audio booth, go into the truck, and then have the truck have the space and the bandwidth basically to take that Away audio stream and ship it out. So that's what you're staring out. That's what you're staring at with all of that stuff. So that basically, it has to do with the resources available to you and the production truck they're in. So that's what you're staring at. Removable sun pass and safe travels. Thank you, Abby. Okay. That's it for the morning. Thanks to all of you guys for coming in. Thanks for putting up with me in a hotel room in Orlando, Florida. Thanks to Maddie and Nick, who joined us from the airport. Thanks to Abe Gordon at 92.9, who joined us before he had to go to his remote for 92.9. Remember, tomorrow we'll do more Atlanta United. We'll do more Major League Soccer. We'll get to more sound from the post-match yesterday. And Matt Valentine, USL Dallas, joining us at 10. Kaylor Hodges joining us at 10:30 to discuss the USL Championship and anything else on their collective minds. Tyler joining us on Wednesday. Hopefully Dylan joining us before Thanksgiving on Wednesday. Hopefully Marion can join us before Thanksgiving on Wednesday. Trying to slide Nino and Nico to Friday because of Thursday being Thanksgiving. So that's the week as we know it, and we will go from there. News from New England. Andrew Farrell signs for a 13th year, and he's going to be a coach in the Revolution Academy as well. So that's the news out of that. So once again, thanks to all of you guys. We'll get into all the rest of the news of the weekend and all that other stuff tomorrow. As we go, once again, we got this roster decisions coming up in the next, 40 hours? So we'll have that to discuss coming up in the next little bit. It's going to be a big off season for Atlanta United. And sadly, it starts after what happened yesterday afternoon and evening here in Central Florida. Thanks to all of you guys for consuming all the content, being a part of our content as we go here at SDH. Since I'm down here and I'm the only one left, play it safe, everybody. Enjoy your time. Hope you get home safe. Enjoy your naps. Take your time. Get home safely. Drive safely, however you're accessing your homes. Be back at it again tomorrow since we're a little less than 22. And since it is the end of the show, that means I get to do this. Mucho platial. See you tomorrow morning, 9:05 Eastern.